All right, good morning. We're live. Welcome to another Cold Hard Truth. So, a lot of people were asking me to comment, provide my feedback on Coach Red Pill, Gonzalo Lira, whatever name you remember him by. Apparently, it's official. He passed away in Ukrainian prison. Um, Apparently, it's confirmed by his father via or through Tucker Carlson. So, we've heard this before, actually, a few years ago when they picked him up the first time and basically took all of his logins for social media. I've known him for 5 or 6 years now. I think it was 2018 or 19 that we were chatting on Skype actually, and we'd have some pretty long conversations, not typing, but conversations, and chop up a lot of stuff. And it was more than just like red pill stuff. Obviously, we were talking about life and all that good stuff. Overall, Gonzalo was a pretty interesting character. He was polarizing for sure. People either hated him or they loved him. You go on social media because I shared Tucker's story on my Twitter feed, and half the people are like, "Yeah, rest in peace," and the other half the people are rest in piss because they didn't like him. So he had some pretty strong opinions that hurt some people's feelings, obviously. But you can't deny that he was somebody that got eyeballs. He got people's attention. I saw him as a filmmaker, and I came across his stuff on Coach Red Pill first. So he was putting out these videos, kind of similar in the vein of what I talk about. Excuse me for a second. Got a frog in my throat, and a lot of the videos were so. Let me just back up a bit. I've consumed a lot of books and Evo Psych and even the Red Pill space. I've written my own, obviously, summarizing my experiences. But there wasn't a lot of videos that I would watch just because I found them drony and boring and uncompelling and just too long and full of shit, basically. His Coach Red Pill videos, I would recommend people go back and look at his archive. I know that there's Patreon that he had for years that has loads of videos out there. I really hope his widowed wife and kids, more so his kids, get whatever revenues are still coming from that. But somebody should take his archive of videos, everything, and put it out on the internet because there's some good stuff there. It was so good, in fact, that I was envious of the way that he would edit his videos. Because again, he was a filmmaker. He was really good at telling stories. He was really good at getting ideas out, distilling things. They weren't always complete. There was a few. There's a few that I came across. For example, one that comes to mind. He was talking about daddy issues. And he was like, basically 10, 12-minute video. Stay away from him with daddy issues. They're always bad news bears. Here's a personal story about a girl that I dated with daddy issues, and this is what happened, and this is why I think you should stay away from daddy issues women. But there was a level of things that I sometimes, found missing, which I love to have conversations with them on. So in that regard, there was there's a notion of, okay, well, there's a woman that could have, a father in her life, but still have daddy issues in the sense that she wouldn't follow his boundaries, for example, which is something that I talked about in the red flag chapter of my book. And a woman could have a dad in her life, still have a relationship with him, see him at family events and all that sort of stuff, but have no respect for his boundaries or his guidance and stuff like that. And I think that's something that is often missed. But overall, videos are great. Many, many topics covered there. They're still, they're evergreen. You can watch them today and be like, "Yep, this is still true. This is still something that would be useful." I was sort of perusing some of the live chat, and it's going a little bit crazy right now because I forgot to turn it on for members. But some people were like, he unplugged me for making bad mistakes. I almost married a 304. This guy, was like the father like I never had, and I think that he played that role for a lot of dudes. It was in the later years of his life where things started to get weird, and I had him on a few podcasts. So if you go to my Play and Win podcast or just search this channel itself for Gonzalo Lira or Coach Red Pill, you'll see some of the other conversations that we had publicly. We had many more privately, but the public ones that we had, a lot of the stuff we generally agreed on. I think there's a few areas that we disagreed on. I'll talk about that in a bit. But his but his online persona and his conversations and his entertainment and especially his making skills, I thought were great, especially for YouTube. I mean, I'm a jump cut guy. I mean, I don't even edit my own videos anymore. My guy takes care of them all. The stuff that I do in the car. So anything live is obviously unedited. But the way he would edit and stitch them together and change camera angles and scenes and stuff like that, I thought it was always very creative and great. But in the later years of his life, he would just be sitting there chain smoking, in a messed up state, talking about world politics. It's kind of a classic case of FAFO, right? Fuck around and find out. And I questioned him a couple of times, definitely live and even privately. I'm like, what are you doing in Ukraine, man? Like, do you have a death wish? In fact, I'm pretty sure I said that on a live video. And, you can go see his answer to that, obviously, the podcast interview. But he wanted martyrdom, in my opinion. He wanted to leave a impression on the world, and that was his way of doing it. Even his last video, let me just put these up on the screen just real quick, just sort of a comparison. The originals. So this is a channel I found, which is called CRP Archive. Somebody, I guess, took his old videos, and let me just enlarge it a little bit so you can see the thumbnails. But you could see he was reasonably clean cut. Not smoking in any of the videos. His editing and his cuts back and forth were decent. If there's any criticism that I had for Gonzalo, it's that he didn't give a fuck in his like, he's only a few years older than me, and he's not in great shape, never really took care of his health. I noticed in his videos he was putting on weight, and not just, holiday weight. Hey, we had the family over, but like he was getting big, because he'd be sitting back in his t-shirt and his long sleeve, and you could just see this like rotund gut coming out and sort of stuff. And that's when I saw him sort of like going by the wayside. And these were all filmed in his Kharkov studio, I think, in Ukraine before the war. And if you switch over to, let me go over to this screen, which is his last, because he had his channels always demonetized or deleted or something like that. I think it was mostly demonetized, so he would just start up a new one to sort of try to get going. But he had this last channel, which was called Gonzalo Lira Again. And you can see a stark difference between his old videos. And again, these are only like 5 years apart. If you go back 5 years on my channel and look at the stuff today, maybe the beard's a little grayer or whatever, but still, in the same shape, reasonable, state offered to the public. But in these, like, especially in these thumbnails over here, he's starting to look like those Transformers, those like middle-aged men, beyond 50 or 60 that, they're losing their hair and they grow it long sort of thing. And they just sort of, I don't know, it just didn't make any sense to me. And I knew he had a couple kids, and he was married, I think, to a Ukrainian woman. If I'm not mistaken, I think he said she was an au pair. So she was in childcare or something like that. But I'd often talk to him in Holland, sometimes when he was traveling, but mostly in Ukraine when we had these conversations. And he would never bring up his wife and kids. Sorry, I don't know if he was married, but I think he called her his wife. He obviously had a fondness for his children. If you look at his old studio, you can see pictures of his kids, drawings in the backgrounds. But I don't think he really ever, as far as I ever saw, shared imagery of his wife or his kids. I think he kept that very private. And I asked him once live and once off the air. I said, so what's going on, with your kids? Like, is everything okay with them? Did you get them out of the country? What's happening with your wife, sort of thing. And he didn't want to answer it. He went in a totally different direction. He skirted it. He behaved very awkwardly around the subject of, like what's going on with your wife and kids. You get to see them, sort of thing. I think he said that he was able to communicate with his kids, but there was no fondness or attachment to his wife. And I've had lots of conversations with guys over the years, both privately and on call-in sessions. And to me, that picked up on me as she had taken the kids and left. So I don't think that they were together for the last few years, which might have led him to the martyrdom sort of thing. The fuck around, find out, because he had really nothing else to live for at that point. I would imagine if his kids have been removed from his day to day life, because I could only imagine, as a father myself, I would want to spend my last days, if I knew I had, last days coming up, because I know he had some health issues. Apparently, he died of pneumonia, double pneumonia in both of his lungs in the prison. He was a very heavy smoker the last few years, because you just see him chain smoking away, through videos. So that's not going to help if you've got health issues. I think he had heart issues. He did confirm it in one video, but it was like a fuck around, find out moment, and I don't get it. The only thing that I can think of is, maybe she just took the kids and left, sort of thing. So he never really talked about any of that stuff publicly. And when I asked him, he would just don't want to talk about that. Even privately, don't want to talk about it. It's not a conversation I want to have. So I found that interesting. But Tiffany Dover was another interesting piece that I enjoy following him on and having conversations with him on. If you don't know who Tiffany Dover is, he would often ask, where is Tiffany Dover? Because she was the girl that was portrayed on media, by the mainstream media, as this hero, the first nurse to ever take the experimental beer bug jab. And apparently she disappeared after that because she passed out. So, he was putting word out there she had passed away. And there was some controversy around that, to say the least. What other notes do I have here? Motorcycles. Love talking to him about bikes. He had a strong affinity for motorcycles and motorcycling and traveling, and the thrills that came with motorcycling. I think he was a lifetime motorcyclist, as far as I could tell. He certainly echoed my sentiments on it being a rite of passage for men. And there's an entire chapter in my book I cover that. One of the areas that he was vehemently opposed to in discussion that I always found fascinating was the notion that cryptocurrency, and especially Bitcoin, was a scam. He would have nothing to do with it. Said it was a scam. It's a rug pull. People are gonna be taken advantage of, and it's kind of interesting because within days of the announcement of him passing, the Bitcoin ETFs, all kicked off. There was a half dozen, kicked off in the first day, I think, if I'm not mistaken, further legitimizing, the notion of cryptocurrency. He was a finance guy too. He loved finance. He loved world politics and talking about finance. And he did have a bit of a background in it beyond filmmaking, the time that he spent in, the United States. But I always found it interesting that he hated cryptocurrency so badly, and Bitcoin especially. It's like Bitcoin solved, the very structure of it solved a lot of the issues that he was bringing up in his conversations with monetary policy and politics and control of the government, because it puts so much of the control and freedom that he was seeking and asking others to ask questions about back in their control. So I always found it really unusual that he was such he would hold himself to be like a libertarian, but he didn't embrace the notion of a digital currency like Bitcoin, which I found super interesting. Anyway, I don't think this needs to be a super long chat because there's really nothing beyond that I know. Aside from he was always kind. I think he was a good man. I don't know that he was good at being a man. Especially in his later years with the way that he's sort of fizzled out like that. But he was certainly an enjoyable character, and somebody that sort of did his own thing and marched the beat of his own drum. He never tried to, as far as I know, really have conversations with or integrate with anybody in the Mano Swamp. There were people that worked in the Mano Swamp that really hated him though for some reason. I don't know why. I think it was more because of envy or jealousy because they were like, "Oh, he's he's a grifter and he doesn't belong there." And it's like I've always said, you know, wisdom comes from experience, and you want to listen to older guys when it comes to conversations and topics and the notions of the challenges that young men deal with in the world today. And I saw a lot of young, inexperienced posers in the Mano Swamp, pretending or holding out that they were experienced or knowledgeable. And because he got such good reach with his videos and the way that they were edited and distilled, to the point, I think that there might have been a little bit of envy and jealousy there. But he was really, really fascinating dude to have conversations with. So rest in peace, Gonzalo Lira. He was fascinating man. I strongly encourage you to all go back to his archives and watch some like his older videos in the CRP. And I hope somebody out there, if you have access to all of his videos and even his Patreons and stuff like that, you know, share it. Let other people see it, because I think there's some decent conversations and questions to be asked. He was a curious character, so that's how I would sum him up. Anyway, I think I'll wrap it up on that note. You guys, chop it up in the chat and leave some comments, and you let me know what you think. Again, if you want to see those, oh, there's a few super chats here. Let me get those in a second. If you want to see the public conversations that I had with him, just search this YouTube channel with either Coach Red Pill and or Gonzalo Lira. I think there's definitely one. There might be 2 or 3 conversations that I've had with him over the years, but go check him out. He was fun to talk to. Let me check these super chats here. It was inevitable that he was going to get killed there. He was spreading too much truth on the war. Yeah, RIP CRP. And Chuck says, I know a bunch of people in the sphere didn't like him, but when I discovered the Red Pill 5-6 years ago, he was one of the guys who got me to open my eyes, spoke himself to death, but the man was a man of his words. Yeah, he spoke himself to death. Yeah, there's no doubt about that. He did. So there's a legacy of his Coach Red Pill videos, I think, which are probably the best place to sort of remember and reminisce of some of the conversations you had. Because I think, like a lot of the stuff on YouTube, a lot of it is just filler, and his stuff was like 9/10. I don't think anybody, me inclusive, does 10/10, but I think he was like he was right up there. And one of the few channels that I would watch on a regular basis, just because they were useful, consistent, short, distilled. They were just good and entertaining, the way that they were edited. So check them out. Anyway, I hope you guys have an awesome